Welcome to the show, Alex.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks, man. Um,
Absolutely.
so I
Maybe fun.
I know for you have a great story, like a sales story in terms of the work with startups and how you got into sales and into sales leadership. So just for listeners, can you give a little background on how you got into sales and management?
Yeah. I started off in sales, doing Cutco knives, so door to door and appointments and did that for a couple of years for college. Came out, went through Wells Fargo, did the whole business banking route. And I had 5 bosses at one time, and I just was like, life is too short. This is not for me. And I left and I joined the startup world. Was really interested in tech. Went to a company as a sales rep. It was a telecom startup in Denver, and kind of worked my way up, addition by subtraction. So people started quitting. And so I started moving my way up inside of this small little startup. Ended up going back to grad school, always wanted to go to grad school. Went to CU Boulder, and I needed to get an internship in between the 2 years. And a mentor friend of mine said, you should check out my friend's company. He just started it like weeks ago. It was called PivotDesk. It's like Airbnb for office space. And I said, cool. What the hell is Airbnb? Uh, so I did my research. Loved commercial real estate before I was in telecommunications, and I worked with a lot of commercial real estate brokers for leads. And it was kind of a crossroads of technology and real estate. So I jumped into that, and it was from the very, very beginning that I was a salesperson, and I just kind of started creating everything, and ended up becoming the manager and VP of sales, and kind of worked my way up and figured out what I needed to figure out, and found mentors for myself, known help where I needed, and TechStars was really good for kind of a launch point as well. We went through that, and found some great mentors. So kind of got a crash course in sales leadership, made probably every mistake that a person can make. Learned a lot, and luckily enough, we had enough money that I was able to scale it pretty good, and have gone on to do a lot of sales coaching and consulting and turnaround and acceleration, all kinds of different things.
Awesome. The Cutco, I mean, that is sales fundamentals. I mean, I've done some door to door, I've managed some door to door sales teams. And um, how would you say, how did what you learned in sales fundamentals in that environment carry over into the tech space?
I would say that it's where I was lucky enough that I got to make every single mistake from a sales rep's point of view at a very young age, so that I got the learning right away. I have a very much of a never quit mentality, and I'm kind of obsessed with figuring it out. So when I started Cutco, it was $15 per appointment. And I knew that I had a great work ethic, and I figured I didn't really care if I sold anything. It was just go out, do the appointments, and you make money. And I figured I could do X amount of appointments every single week, and I can make some good money. And one of the things that I learned really quick is if you don't sell anything, your boss is probably going to get mad and want to let you go. So I did I don't know, I did 100 or so appointments, and I sold like $100 or something. It was insane. And I vividly remember my manager saying, like, bringing me into his office. He's like, I've never seen in the history of this company anyone do this many appointments and not selling. And he was like, I got to let you go. Like, you're just not good. And kind of begged for my job and begged for help, begged for me to stay. And he gave me another chance. And that's where I got a crash course in true sales. When I actually started selling, I wasn't following a process. I wasn't listening to the customer. I was doing kind of what I wanted. The places that I was insecure about, asking for the order, talking about price, I just stopped doing. It was almost like I gave this presentation, and right when I was about ready to do the ask, I just close shop and say thank you very much, and walk out the door. Um, so I learned really, really quick. You have to follow the process. You have to be disciplined. You have to go for the close. You have to ask. You can't just assume that they know that what they're gonna buy, or that they know what's gonna happen. You have to be able to tie the actual pain to your customer. So I remember that we used to be able to like cut a penny and cut a rope and cut all these like materials. Well, people don't use kitchen knives to cut rope and pennies and these different things. So being able to bring, some type of fruit or vegetable or something that they can cut, really just kind of put that use case in their mind, whether it was, cutting bread or tomato or whatever it is. So it really set me off on the right track after making a lot of mistakes. Um, and then it got to the point where I was doing appointments and I was trying to figure out, how do I sell on every appointment? Do I sell, bigger deals or increase your average order size? And that's when I started really digging in. And this is all in Cutco about how to upsell, how to ask for the order and then continue to push, how to really tie in what the people are talking about. So your buyers, ask them, for example, how do they cook? What do they cook? And really tying in the use cases to what they do into what you're selling. And that's one of the things that has kind of stuck with me throughout all these years is, you really want to ask the questions up front, do your discovery correctly, and your close rates will actually skyrocket. If you just focus on you and talk about you in the beginning and how great you are and how great your product is and your company is, so what? Like, who cares? Like, nobody cares what you do. They care why you do. And when you can tell it in a story format, it's just like a movie trailer. People buy into that. They're attracted to that story. They want to hear what the rest of the story is. They want to hear what the ending is. I mean, think of a bad movie that you watched and you sat through just so you could see what was going to happen at the end. And you knew what was going to happen at the end. You just wanted to see it. It's the same idea. That attraction to the story works really, really well. Whether you're in SMB sales or marketplace or enterprise, whatever it is, like when you have their attention and you bought into that theme, like you can guide them to purchase. You don't have to convince them to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I think of like the Cutco model, and I sometimes think of it as that was before digital marketing, right? Like that
Yeah.
was sales was marketing. I'm gonna knock on your door. You may not have been unaware. I mean, some TV ads, things like that, but for all intents and purposes, like that last mile marketing was the sales team. You mentioned the process. Is the sales process from a model like that just completely fundamentally different than, what you see in tech companies that probably do a better job of getting the customer further along before they talk to the sales team?
Um, not, no. The quick answer is no. I would say that the model has changed a lot due to the amount of information that's available. So a lot of the questions were a lot of what you would Google today, that you would try to educate, like buyers would educate themselves. So I think that I look at things in a buyer's process. So I have this problem, I'm thinking about it, or I'm trying to think of this use case all the way to what does the actual purchase and kind of decision committee look like. Back then, I mean, you had nothing. You had no information. You really had whatever the sales rep was kind of telling you, or maybe some of the advertisements, or maybe your own personal experience. So there wasn't nearly as much um, outside information that could influence, but it didn't change the way that like your tone, your confidence, did you come off as salesy or creepy? Did you come off as educated? Those things don't change. And instead of trying to just jump steps and saying, hey, I work at Cutco, here's the knife, you want to buy it? It's walking them through this buying process about seeing themselves use it, putting it in their hands, like talking about their use, like what talking is a week look like for cooking with the family. And all of a sudden they're saying, well, how much does this cost versus are you ready to buy it? And so when you stop focusing on trying to convince somebody to sell something and just start from trying to figure out what the pain is and just latching onto that pain and guiding them to understand how they can solve that pain, I don't think anything really changed. Has the order changed and the speed that you kind of go through some of the steps? Sure. But I think, an educational sale and being confident in the products that you're selling and confident in the solution solving that pain, I don't think that's changed.
And creepy as a salesperson is bad in no matter how you look at it. Yeah.
I think that, yes, yes, that would be a big old yes.
It's universal. You went back the MBA. I wanted to ask you because there's, especially in the entrepreneurial community and in the startup community, there's this, an MBA is not necessarily worth it. And I'm just curious your opinion. You wanted to go back. You did. How valuable or not has it been in getting you where you are today?
Um, so I went back mainly because both of my parents have graduate degrees and it's just something that I've always wanted. And then from that decision, I decided what did I want to get out of it. I knew at the time, having come out of the corporate world, working in a little bit of the startup world, that big corporate world was just not for me. And so I knew that I didn't want to go to this Ivy League school to be able to get this corporate job that made all this money. I knew that just was not for me. I was planning on going to California for school, and I was living in Colorado. I was living in Denver. I'd never been to Boulder, which is like 45 minutes away. And I finally had a friend tell me, drive up here, talk to me. Let's walk around the campus, learn about what this school is about. And I fell in love. And it really came down to, I knew I wanted to be in entrepreneurship. My family in general are big entrepreneurs. And one of the things that I've always learned is you just bet on yourself. My uncle always said, if you learn how to sell, you'll never go hungry. And I took that to heart. He built his own companies, and it's his work ethic. And it's just, there's no quick fixes. There's no shortcuts. Like, you got to put in the work. Whether you put in the work now or you put in the work later, you still got to put in the work. It's just kind of when you choose to do it. And I didn't have the money to go to some of these big schools. I didn't have the loans and the things like that I wanted to kind of take on the debt. And I kind of looked at it and said, hey, I want to bet on myself with the sole notion that I knew I was going back to school for the network. I was lucky enough that Boulder has Techstars, Foundry Group, phenomenal kind of early stage tech community. And that's kind of more luck for me because I didn't know that's what I wanted right away versus going out to, say, a Silicon Valley or going up into Boston and MIT and that kind of area or New York. So I got lucky a little bit on the entrepreneurship front tech wise, but not entrepreneurship wise. And I had a great network. People are super nice. Everybody in Boulder is rah. Sometimes a little bit too rah, but they're very open. They're very hopeful. It's a great place to really build a company. And for that, like the network that I built was fantastic. And so my MBA did what it was supposed to do. I got an MBA in finance and venture capital. And one of my mentors and teachers was Jason Mendelson at Foundry Group. So I got, I guess, doubly lucky that way. But I would recommend an MBA if you actually understand what it's supposed to do for you. Like, it is a tool, and I would use it as a tool to get to what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good answer. When I was considering going back to get my MBA, my mentor at the time said, you go back for three reasons. Like an MBA, there's the network, there's the actual learning, in the curriculum, and then there's the initials. You have an MBA, and if you want one of the three, it's probably going to cost less. If you want all of the three, it's probably going to cost more. But just understanding what is it you want out of this. Like, what's the
Right.
Why are you pursuing this, and then go accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, I did finance in undergrad, so I wasn't about to go back to MBA school and go, well, you know what? There's 12 financial statements like that, and assume that was going to happen. So I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. I mean, it's a nice refresher. But just the time that you have, and I went full time. I didn't do like an evening program. The time that it takes to figure out what you wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to stay in sales. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I mean, I was I went to events in the natural space, in green. I went in oil and gas. I mean, I was in CPG. I was all over the map, and I kind of gravitated towards tech because that's where really just my passion was, and my action spoke louder than what I've said. But I noticed I was constantly going to events. I had a really, really great time with it. And I used it as a tool. I used it as the ability to say, hey, I have a little bit of a reset. I think I was 27, 28, something like that when I went back, and it did what it was supposed to do for me. At the time of my life and the stage of my career and what I was trying to accomplish, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Right now, I think people are using it for some good reasons, some bad reasons. I think you should be asking yourself, like, at the end of this, what am I trying to achieve? And then you should be able to decide, is it right for you, school, all that?
Yeah. Begin with the end in mind.
Absolutely.
You sold yourself back into Cutco. And then you stayed in sales. You did well in sales, and you said you ended up becoming manager. What was what was the story? Your first management role? Like how did that evolve?
So it evolved because the manager quit and moved to a different state, and there was nobody else left. And I was the only person that actually understood how to make sales. So I kind of got it by default. We had a couple other reps, and I love the go get more reps. That was a task that I had. So what is recruiting and hiring? I'd never done it before. And it was just interesting. I mean, I've learned a lot. So I used to be a phenomenal sales rep, and I knew how to sell. I know how to sell. I'm very good at. But the place that I really struggled with was, could I articulate what it is that I did in order to teach somebody else how to do it? And it's not that my way is the only way, which of course, when I was younger, that's what I thought. But I couldn't even articulate what it is that I did in order to teach somebody else. And it was always just watch what I do, get out of my way, but watch what I do and learn. And I used to say this phrase religiously, which is funny because I never say it, is, it used to come down to, I don't understand why you don't understand. And it was always I couldn't understand why, after watching me do what I do, you couldn't figure it out. Or if I told you that worked one time, you couldn't figure it out. And fell pretty hard on my face, had some pretty tense conversations with a lot of different reps as well as the owner. And I learned, and I studied, and I read books, and that's when LinkedIn was coming out more, and content marketing was coming a bigger thing. And started to find some mentors, and I learned about Techstars, and I learned about all these different types of places where you can actually self-educate yourself, self-coach yourself. And it kind of comes back to the same similar understanding. It was this never quit mentality. And I knew I wanted to build my own company, and I knew I couldn't do it alone. And I knew I needed to learn those skills. And being a manager and being a leader is completely different than being a sales. Some of the same soft skills are still there, of course, but being a manager is not about you. It's about them and helping them sell more. I remember very, very first TechStars mentor that I ever spoke to was Keenan, way, way, way back many years ago. And I remember one of the things that he told me was, like, realize that as the sales leader, your job is simply to help them sell more. I mean, he said a million other things with it, but he said, they're going to sell whether you're there or not. Your job is to help them sell more. And so I took that to heart, and I've learned a lot of different ways to really articulate it and learn and listen. And then kind of, you find your different places. And then obviously the data and the metrics and all that, people have started to help create insights. But that was a huge learning for me. And people just learn in different ways. And following what I specifically do is not the only way to learn.
Yeah. In helping them sell more, the word that kind of stands out to me is helping them. Instead of, there's a mindset, especially with new managers, that it's to make them sell more. like my job's to make you sell more. And it's really, when you adopt the mindset of, I'm here to help you. Like I clear the blockers, I get you the tools, I help with coaching. But like, that's
Yeah.
my job, is to help and support you, not make you do something.
Yeah. And as soon as you try to tell people what to do, I mean, I get it, right? As a manager, as a leader, you kind of need your people to do certain things, but there's the what, and then there's the why. And if you can get them to buy into the why they need to do something, especially the how to, like how to do it and how to do it effectively, right? Like, you need to set more meetings. You need to make more calls. Like, okay, like help me understand why, and then help me understand like how to do it. Like get into the trenches and show me. If you were this hot shot sales rep back in your previous life, show me that you still got it. The times of selling today are much different uh, than they are years ago from like tactical point of view. The process is still the same, but like how you can go about it. At Cutco, we used to do a tell sell approach. We just tell people they're going. That doesn't work anymore. We used to do base selling, kind of works today if you really stretch it. Now, I mean, what is consultative selling, or what is challenger selling? I mean, you kind of have a flavor and a mix of a lot of these different types of methodologies. And what used to work doesn't necessarily back in the day doesn't necessarily work.
You mentioned that you went out and kind of learned this intentionally, like deliberately. And
Yeah.
I know you work with some founders this way too, but we work with a lot of founders, CEOs, that they know their business really well. It's how they started it, it's how they got it to where it is now, but they don't necessarily know sales or marketing. And if they wanted to if they wanted to do a crash course, or just go dive in, if I'm a founder, CEO, and I want to go learn sales better right now, or sales management, where would you what advice, or what resources, or what would you recommend?
Um, well, there's a lot of different places. I'd probably avoid a lot of the long form course trainings. I would get on LinkedIn. I would look at some of the things on like a Coursera or a Skillshare. Find kind of the people who you vibe with their advice the most. There's a lot of sales advice being thrown out there right now. And I think before you start listening to the advice, I think you just kind of hear what they're saying, understand who they are, understand their background, seeing kind of what you vibe with and what you don't, and then move forward. And you could reach out to people. So I think that it's very flattering when people reach out and say, "Hey, I think what you're saying is fantastic. Can I take 30 minutes and just get your insights around ABC topic and where you want to go from here? Or what do you think I should do this or that?" I think get involved on LinkedIn is a fantastic way that you can really learn. Um, it's kind of like in school when you would take notes, what the teacher was saying, and the more you wrote down, the more you consumed it. But if your friend just gave you their notes, you didn't really get it. It didn't make all the sense. It didn't work the same way. So I think the biggest thing was get in there and you got to start trying it. Whether it's courses, like I mean, I have a course that people will buy and listen to, and it's great. It could be podcasts. I mean, there's a million free podcasts just like this where you're really just sharing a lot of great knowledge. I think the sales hacker community is fantastic. They feel like they cover and exhaust every possible angle. I mean, when you look at somebody like a Kevin Dorsey who has a Patreon group who's wildly successful, or a Marcus Chan, like these guys know their stuff, and they're really, really like at the pulse of what sales reps are doing and the things that they're dealing with. Learn it right from people who are doing it today versus, reading a book that was probably actually written a year ago, took a while to get published, and is more theory based. Like that was the hardest part for me, was taking a book that I'd read and go, how do I actually translate this into my day to day? I know that I took a bunch of like Gary V books and been like, I'm going to copy this word for word. And then it didn't work. Pieces of it work, but you need to be able to adapt, and it's okay to ask for help. I feel like sales reps are male, female, young, old, doesn't matter. Like it's okay to ask for help. I mean, how do you translate this? Asking targeted, like pinpoint questions versus, hey, can I pick your brain on sales? Like I have no idea where you're going with pick my brain on sales. So um, I think once that happens, you can start to you figure out who you vibe with, pick on ways that you learn, whether it's audio, with whether it's video, whether it's something that you can download. Like you figure out what works well for you, and I think the most important piece to it all is push it out into the world, especially like a technical founder or like a non business sales type founder. Start with your friends. One of my clients always says, I made my pitch. I made it so that my grandma can actually understand what I do. And tech can be very complicated at times. If your grandma gets it, you probably simplified it enough for most people to understand. So try with your friendlies and your family and your friends. Like they'll give you real feedback. They're not just going to be like rah rah the whole time as much as you think they will be.
Right. And do you same audience if you're an entrepreneur starting your business, because you've mentioned the sales process quite a bit. I know we've talked about that a lot before. Um,
Yeah.
when should when should founders, entrepreneurs, small business owners, when should they start thinking about really formalizing a sales process or creating sales playbooks? Is there a specific stage you usually advise people to start thinking about that?
So thinking about it, I'd say from the very beginning, I think that a lot of times you start too late. I'm along the idea of build it as you go. Um, with the tools these days, it's really easy to document things as you go, create videos, record calls. So when you understand the process, I mean, in the beginning, it's just a guess. I mean, there's some common sense in there. You can do some research. But when you're just starting out, how do people buy? I know that it goes from lead to, meeting set to qualified to proposal to, close one type of thing. And you just kind of fill in the gaps and you start to learn. And in the beginning, you make mistakes and it's okay. You can hire, people like you and me who can help you try to avoid a lot of those mistakes. There's plenty of business models and processes that are out there that if you have a enterprise sale or an SMB sale or a marketplace type business model, there are processes that you can use as a template. And the goal would be to confirm and prove, yes, that works. Maybe you need another step. Maybe you need less of a step, but I would document it along the way to say, this is what I did. And I did this next step. And I did this next thing. And while you're doing it, just write it all down on a simple Google Doc or something that makes it really easy. Um, you talk to your clients or your prospects, record the call. There's Richard always says there's three sides to every story. There's your side, there's their side, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. And when I hear call recordings, I hear the rep say, one on one, this is what happened. And I listen to the call and I go, this is your version of it because something else happened different. And right then and there, you can improve your own pitch. You can improve your own process. You can talk about next steps and you're documenting the process along the way. You edit, delete, add a new one. And then it's beautiful because as you're doing all that, as long as you document it, you literally just created your own onboarding and training plan for any future reps that you do hire, whether they're sales or anybody else in the company. But it all starts back to some type of universally understood process. Because otherwise you're going to get into some mess where everybody does something different, sells different, says different steps. And you're fixing issues that you could have proactively solved
Right.
or avoided, really.
Yeah, it's good advice. Like think about it early, but I mean, there's only so much you can do. You can end up overbuilding early on for something that you realize you had to
Yeah.
take a right turn at some point and it's no longer applicable. You've wasted a lot of time and money.
Yeah. I mean, when I say you start from the beginning, I don't mean that you like down for an hour scheduled on your calendar day in and day out. Say, okay, what's my process for this? Some of it could just be, this is, kind of gut instincts and reactions to how to solve something. But if it worked, take 3 minutes and write it down and say, these are the 5 things that I did, and this was the result. So that if you have to do it again, go back and see if you tweak it, you get a better result or a worse result. It doesn't have to be this like overly obsessive thing, but if you just start to document the things that you do in the order that you do them, the process is kind of built for you, and it takes a lot of the pressure off yourself in the future, because then you don't have to have this big like implementation of a new process, or everybody has to change what they were doing. You kind of built it from the beginning, and it's just kind of built in from the foundation.
Right. I know we share some pretty strong opinions on culture in sales organizations. And, I think it can be hard to quantify. I completely get that, but it's undoubtedly contributed to either the great successes that I've been part of, or some demises that I've observed. And there's I know we agree on that, but you improved culture in one sales organization so much so that people were withdrawing their resignation letters.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like, can you tell me that, like, that experience, like, what was going on? How did you identify it? How did you determine what you needed to do and then execute it? Like, what is that story?
Yeah. So this is a couple of years ago. It was a global company that an investor friend of mine asked me to get involved with. Two companies merged together, probably 6 months before I got involved. And on paper they had merged, but in actuality there was no merger. They were kind of just jammed together, and there was just I think it was like a massive email that said, "Hey, we are now one company, and go for it." Um, and come into the company, and it's very similar to you. Before I do anything, I do like an audit. I just do like a listening tour, and I walk around and I talk to all the different leaders and the different reps and the different employees and all the different departments. And in this case, I was the kind of brought in as a COO. And one of the things that we did is just start listening to what people had said. And I think it was the end of the first week that I got an email that said, these are the 5 people that have handed in their resignation letters. It's very interesting when you're in Europe. It's really hard to resign. It's like a long process. Maybe it's changed since then or not, but it wasn't like, hey, you quit that day or you have 2 weeks. Like, it was a multi-step process, and so we had a little bit of time. Um, and so after kind of doing my listening tour, things that I kind of learned were there was no intentional culture. There was no goals. There was no mission. There was no direction. So there was no place that the reps could all kind of rally around and say, "This is what we're trying to achieve." It was very much of just go get more revenue, which not 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 the greatest thing to kind of rally around. People understand that companies need to get more revenue in order to grow, but are like, why this company? Why this team? Like, why this solution? Let's buy into the people. Uh, I am a huge believer that people quit people, not organizations. You could have the worst solution in the world, but if you have an awesome manager, they can kind of make it pretty awesome. And I was really focused, and I talked transparently and from the heart. I said, I can't change what has happened in the past, but I can change what happens in the future. And we had a lot of leadership discussions. We had a lot of, company-wide announcements and plans and strategies that said, we are going to change this. And we listened to the employees. And I would say, like, the overarching theme was being nobody trusted anybody. And for a while, and I, if it's short period of time, was I don't demand respect. I don't demand trust. I earn it. And I earn it with my actions, and I earn it with what I've done. And that was able to I guess a lot of the people who would quit, and I'm sure there was other people that snuck through on me, but yeah, I vividly remember 5 people withdrawing their applications specifically because they said, "Hey, we like where this is going. We're buying into what you're saying," and it changed. And I mean, I've talked to people since then, and I say a lot of the things that I built are still there today. But it's one of those things where I used to think that I was a customer first kind of person, and I'm not. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to say, but I'm an employee first kind of person. And if you take care of your employees, your customers will benefit from it. And if you treat them with respect, like these aren't pawns, these aren't numbers, these aren't widgets. Like they got families, they got lives. They're not gonna just kill themselves for you just because. Um, they buy into something and they buy into that vision and that why. And when you actually speak from the heart, people want to be around those types of people. People don't want to be around assholes and who demand things and expect things and tell you what to do and never back it up. And, that type of intentionality. I'm not saying like we want a fun culture. I'm talking like actual true, like an intentional, high integrity, trustful, respectful culture that we're all moving together in the same place to achieve the same vision. People buy into that.
Yeah, they do. I've experienced it firsthand in a couple of turnaround environments too. And one thing that's always been helpful is, at least from my standpoint, is when the change in culture is kind of preceded by a change in the business. So in your case, you were the new COO, so that change in and of itself is kind of what gets you there. And because of that, I tend to think that there's people will open up, right? Like if I haven't been working with you, or I don't feel like you've been part of the problem necessarily, so you can get people to open up. If you're in the CEO role and you just recognize, like, your gut tells you it's not right, but it's tough to get people to open up to you. Cause I mean, I experienced the same thing when we do audits. When we initially, I was surprised at people, how much they would just share with me. And I was like, holy shit, I feel like I'm like a psychologist sometimes. They have all this pent up energy and they want better for the organization, but it's easier to kind of communicate that to an outsider or to somebody that's new. Is what kind of advice would you give, or what recommendations would you make to a CEO or a sales VP that senses what it is, but they've been there, they want to lead change without having necessarily flip over everything?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm actually going through that with a couple of new clients now. The best way I've ever done it is I let my guard down first. I do it both from a inside the company, like leader to employee, and I do it same way in sale. Because I think a lot of prospects are going to have their guard up, right? They assume they're going to get sold. Um, I think the key is the transparency around this isn't right. I think we can all agree there's something wrong here. Like we can all do better. And I think it humanizes you. I think it makes you this person who people can go, all right, like you're not a robot. You're not this machine. Um, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I work really, really hard, and there's times where I'm going a million miles an hour and I'm just plugging the machine, right? And I take out the people factor. And all of a sudden, all it takes is somebody on the, hey, just like stop, like slow down, man. Like, what is going on here? You're going so fast that you don't even realize what you're actually doing. And what I started to do was build like scheduled time for reflection into my week and into my frankly my months in the beginning, but now I do it every week, is just to look back and go, what's going on? Let me be a little bit more intentional from a people point of view, like what's working, what's not working, and really listening to your team. Yeah, you're the leader, you're supposed to know all the answers. Well, you know what? You don't know all the answers, and it's okay that you don't know all the answers. The goal is to hire a bunch of really, really smart people who can go do the thing that the business needs to do and help as a whole educate everybody else and work together to build it. And you can build that type of an organization, or you can build an organization that nobody wants to be in, and you're the only person that knows how everything works. You could never take a vacation. You got to work 1,000,000 hours, and everybody hates you. And you have to pay everybody just to stay. Right. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I look at it and go, oh, I was younger, right? I was earlier in my career. Like, I remember the bosses and the things that they did and what I did and did not like. Just don't do that shit.
Just don't
Like,
do it.
it's not that hard. Like, stop being an asshole.
Yeah, it's I remember as you started talking, I remember one of my first VP of sales. We were in an inside sales environment, and there were grumblings. There were, wasn't completely dysfunctional, but it was going downhill. And he said, "All right, tomorrow we're meeting up," and he rented out the floor above us, and we're like, this is probably going to be some cheesy team building or something. And we went upstairs, and there were these tables out, and he said, "All right, everybody's pissed. Like, tell me why. Let's go. Like, let's chat about it. Like, this is you have immunity, absolute immunity. Like, nothing is going. I need to understand what is going on. I don't understand it." And
Right.
like, one person spoke up, and then another person spoke up, and then there was just this flood of criticisms. And not one time was he defensive. He said, "Okay, got it. Like, that one I can work with, that one I can't." And it was a very transparent conversation. He was completely vulnerable, and so was, yeah, I've seen that work. It's good advice.
But the thing is, it takes the leaders. Like, it has to come from the top, because if it comes from, a manager, it's going to affect a very small portion of the people, but all of the other team members and other divisions and other departments are not going to buy in. Like, it has to come from the top. And it's, there's not everything has to come from the top, but this has to come from the top. And it takes a lot to just kind of put your ego on the shelf, because if you're the founder, right, you can get a bruised ego, and you're yelling at the company, and you're saying how much this sucks and that sucks, blah, blah, blah. But it's not intentional, or I should say, it's not an attacking personal attack. It's we're here. We've bought in. This is something that I do 50, 60, 70, whatever hours every single week. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm telling you, because I want to actually help. Listen to me. I mean, these people aren't stupid. They say it enough, and you don't listen, they're going to go get a job someplace else where they are listened to.
Right. It's a good segue to my next question, that I've seen with several organizations recently, even with this, with COVID and everything, the sales organizations are starving for good talent right now. I mean, at least from what I've seen, from SDR to AE, I mean, all the way through, finding really good people. It's always been hard in sales, but it seems, because of the remote nature of things now, I mean, there's, people in Silicon Valley, I can compete anywhere, in terms of hiring people. What, if you're building a sales organization and you want to be really competitive and get the best people, besides throwing money at it, I mean, obviously there has to be some money, but what would you do to make your sales organization more competitive for talent right now?
I would learn how to develop employees. That's about as simple as I can get. Most people think that they're going to come into a company, they're going to do their job, and they want to get promoted, and they want to learn new skills. They want to believe that what they're doing is impacting the overall business to go forward. I agree. And I think you need to communicate those things very, very appropriately. You have to have all those things. But most importantly, like, you have to develop people. Like, they have to be curious. They have to be motivated. They have to be all these things that you can look for in attributes, but you need to kind of pour a little fuel on the fire for them. You need to spend time onboarding them. Don't just throw them 4 PDFs and expect that they're going to figure it out. Don't send them to your top sales rep and say, "Hey, follow this person for 2 weeks." This is a time where there are a ton of jobs for AEs, SDRs, and just, I don't know, if you're in like the go-to-market side of the house, you can pretty much get whatever salary you want, like right now. And you're going to have to pick and choose between, different types of offers. And if pay is the same and, rank is the same, similar type of position, like you buy into the people, you buy into the culture, you buy into, what's training look like? How do you invest in employees? I'm sure you're similar. I talk to my clients, like the actual reps who I work with, and I talk about it and go, your boss, like your leaders, pay a lot of money for me to come in and invest into you. You should be thrilled. Do you have any idea how many companies don't do this? I'm not talking like giant companies like Verizon or Salesforce or whatever that have massive departments. I'm talking about, small to medium sized businesses who you can invest from the outside in. You can invest with your people and your managers and your leaders. But if you focus on developing talent and you promote from within and you do what you say you're going to do, your employees aren't going anywhere. They're not going to jump ship to the next place. They're not going to be grass is greener on the other side. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to refer their friends. And then if somebody asks, hey, where should I work? Word's going to spread around. I want to go work with those people. I want to work for that leader. I want to work for that CEO. That's what you want. I mean, it's no different than customers, but like, talk about like, stop trying to convince people to stay after they give their notice and saying, here's another 10 grand. Why do I want to work at a company that I've worked at for however many years and then I quit and then you give me more money? How about you give me more money and instead of even more money, invest in me, help me develop skills that I never thought about or couldn't attain on my own, or I needed to do better at my job. And maybe you don't need to hire as many people and you can just get the current employees to actually do more because they understand it better. That's the way I would look at it. It's like money is obviously mandatory. Like it is a part of, especially in the sales career, like you have to be able to pay your people, but there's a lot more than just money. And I think it focuses on developing. And that's where I've gotten pretty much everybody to kind of buy in. And that's why the churn's low.
Yeah, it's a really good point. The development and as you've mentioned, even, earlier, the understanding the why, when there's a mission and there's a purpose and we're rallying behind something, where it's always better to be in the boat with a team that you want to be part of. It makes it harder to leave too, if they're, and then, if they're developing you. One of the things I've thought about is that, sales leadership is good or bad at scale, right? Like because you're, one sales manager has, 10 people. If they suck at their job, that's 10 people that they're affecting. But all the resources, not all, but primarily most of the resources that companies invest are into the 10, less into the one. And that's where you really have a big impact. And I wanted to ask you from your experience, if you're looking at a sales team in a growing company and you want to identify who's most likely to have some good leadership traits or good, be the next person, instead of just making the best salesperson gets the promotion, which we know is, terrible way of going about it.
Yeah.
What are the things that you would look for those skills?
Yeah. Sales is just, performance is a piece of it. One of the things I do is identify doing peer coaching without being told to do peer coaching. I think that's a really big place. Someone who's kind of mobilizing the team in general around what leadership is saying. So for example, if we're all trying to focus on getting better at cold calls, but nobody's recording calls and no one's analyzing calls, maybe they step up and say, hey guys, let's all record our calls. Let's do this cadence of I'll review yours and you review mine, and let's focus on one or two things. So I really focus seeing if that sticks out. Almost someone who kind of takes on this leadership role without being either asked to or being told to. They just do it because it's kind of up leveling the team. I also look at it of, who's bringing people along. So when new hires are first starting, there's a handful of people that always reach out and actually provide help, provide mentorship, provide some type of roadmap to say, hey, follow this. This is what will help you avoid roadblocks. So I really focus on, not just the performance, but those intangibles and those attributes that reps are doing inside of the company. I always go, would you rather take someone who is, a top performer, number one, and not, the most social, or not the greatest teammate, and throughout that, versus someone who's an average sales rep, but everyone loves them, knows how to articulate the value, those types of things. I go back and forth. I think a little bit of it has to do with how coachable a person is and what you have around them. But, there's definitely a case to be made to go hire the person who wasn't the greatest rep in the world, but understands how to do it all. You see a lot of that, in like basketball or football coaches who they weren't the star player, but they able to articulate the value the most and rally the team and know what it takes to be that leader. I think that's the key. Is it's not just I'm the greatest sales rep. Sometimes the best sales rep should stay a sales rep and just kind of crush it for themselves. Management sometimes it's not that fun. You got to worry about somebody other than yourself.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very different role for sure. And you said earlier when you early on in your management, you said, I don't understand why you don't understand. Like and I've absolutely been there, and it's kind of reflective of how different the management job is from the execution of the sale. And we've seen, it seems like the good salespeople, like top third, like when they're good, like you said, they can articulate the value proposition, and that have already been demonstrating some leadership on the floor already. I mean, like you said, out there coaching some peers and helping, and, those are all kind of the servant leadership characteristics of somebody even before they're in the role formally. So,
yeah, I mean, you could even, take on extra projects, places, doing the right things when nobody's looking. When you see a problem, you try to fix it. And you go a little bit above and beyond. I'm not saying like redo your role and do a bunch of those things in addition, but if you see that a process between marketing to sales isn't working, or sales reps are failing on this specific thing and you're really good at it, like just put it together. Like don't just do it. Ask for forgiveness. No one's going to say, oh, that was a horrible idea, Alex. Thank you so much for screwing everything up. No, it's like you've done it. You know how to do it. You put together something. I feel like I'm talking to myself around marketing materials, but that's a whole nother subject around creating marketing materials. Like just do it, throw it together. I mean, I have a Canva license, just, $12 a month is nothing, but, I think it's about going above and beyond in helping everybody else. Cause that's really what leadership is about. Like if you can show it without only being financially incentivized as a leader to do it, like now you're showing leadership that you'll do it versus telling them that you will do it.
Yep. That's good. So you have, you're a mentor at, if I'm right, six organizations. Can you,
Depending on it's not, yeah.
it's a decent amount of time. Can you describe to me what is that mentorship, and when would CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs be in the best position to utilize that kind of help? Can you just give me a little bit of background?
Yeah. Well, different mentoring at different times. So it's not just I'm, only mentoring for like day in and day out, or hour in or out. But I mean, a lot of it is so at Techstars has a cohort or a class for, I think it's like 12 or 14 weeks. So I might be a lead mentor. I might just be a sales mentor, and someone can reach out to me and talk, and we'll talk like best practices. Other places, I'm just there as office hours, and you can come to me with help. Sometimes I give presentations like I gave last week. So it just kind of depends. I mean, the big thing is, I went through Techstars at kind of the early onset of my career when I just got into entrepreneurship, and they have a big give first mentality, which is what David Cohen and the gang made there. And I kind of drank the Kool-Aid, if you want to call it, but it really, really makes me avoid all the stupid things that I've done. And you see the success, and you see the clients, and you see the traction, and you see the fundraisers, and you see all of those types of things. It just kind of makes you feel good. So I get involved. I try to mentor. I try to give, hours here, hours there. Sometimes I'm a lead mentor for a cohort. Sometimes I'm just, more reactive and you reach out to me if you have a question. It's usually some kind of sales or go to market or, leadership type thing. Um, but it's not a all day, every day. I'm mentoring companies every single day. And my wife might get a little bit mad about that if I didn't do anything, you know.
And when's the best? I mean, what would your advice be for somebody that sees the mentoring opportunities? Like, is there a stage that's usually best? Is it before you get going? I mean, what's been your experience? When can you help the most typically?
Really, it's at all stages. The key is there's mentors who know each stage. So are you early stage, mid market, enterprise, first hiring? Is it founder led sales, converting to your first hires? Are you trying to scale for the first time? Are you hiring, managers to run your sales team for the first time? Are you hiring VPs of sales? Like, there are different stages of your company and there are different people who know that specific skill. And you should really seek out the mentors for that thing. When you're early on, there's great mentors that might not be the best people to talk to in 3 years when scale to the tens or maybe hundreds of millions. So I think the key is to just understand who to listen to. Be careful about not asking so many people that you eventually just look for what you want to hear. There's a lot of that goes around. Uh, Listen to the people who you believe in, who you trust, who you would listen to about life advice and other types of things. It doesn't have to be everyone until you hear the answer that you want to hear. Like, there, you, sometimes like there's advice overload, and then you're kind of analysis by paralysis. So I would say is it's fine 2 or 3 people based on the stage, based on the division, based on kind of what you're trying to do. Get some advice and then make a decision. I mean, decisiveness is such a crucial thing. Like, don't take a year to make a decision.
Okay. I like that. So you mentioned earlier you have your online course. Can you what's the course for? Who's the ideal person for it?
Yeah, so the course is called Startup Sales Playbook, and it's kind of a combination of everything that needs to go into initial foundation of a sales playbook, from identifying your customers and building a buyer's process and mapping it to a sales process, to negotiation, qualification, that type of thing. If you're a founder, if you're a first time sales anything, I think it's a great starting point. We have a lot of different sales reps and sales leaders who buy into it as well. It's good for, the individual contributor who's in sales, but it's also good for who wants to create kind of the framework for everybody to buy into a single playbook. It gives you a lot of good frameworks and things to follow to get everybody on the same page.
Okay, cool. And where can they find you and where can they find the course?
AlexNewman.com with 2 N's. And it's, you'll see the course right there, Startup Sales Playbook. And as far as where you can find me, obviously the website and then LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn and post 5 days a week, starting to get into the weekend as well. Very active on LinkedIn. That's my jam right now. Unfortunately, don't have time to go to all the other channels, one day Clubhouse and some of the other things. But for right now, I'm just LinkedIn.
Yeah, I put out a couple posts. I mean, you and me both, man. LinkedIn is where I spend the vast majority of any social media time. And like the Clubhouse thing, I got it and I hopped in and I was like, I'm not sure that I understand it. I don't know if that's a function of me getting old or if that's just me being
Yeah.
narrow on LinkedIn, but I hear you. And you have some really great content on LinkedIn too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think it's one of those things where I'm super disciplined on one. Let me figure out one. And then once I can figure that one out, maybe I'll go to another one. But I don't have rhythm for TikTok. And I think I'm too wordy in what I want to say for Twitter, and could care less about Facebook. So LinkedIn's kind of my dude.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I really appreciate you coming by and your time and
Yeah,
feedback here. So I will send people to your site. Hopefully they pick up the course and thanks again for your time, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me on the show. This was a lot of fun.
You bet. We'll do it again.
Absolutely. Thanks
All
a
right.
lot.
Take care.
See ya.